Hello, this is Mark, and this is the second video on this topic. The first video, first of all, the topic is I one of my retirement hobbies is to write computer programs that run baseball board games. So I have limited computer programming skill. I was never a programmer. I just learned on my own, and I use a programming language that is very dated because that's the only one that I know. So I wrote one that I spent a lot of time on for Sports Illustrated because that's the game that I played when I was a kid. That was a very old game and was only around for a couple of years. Now I said, well, let me try this Strat-O-Matic thing that I bought in 1986 for the 1986 season. Probably bought in 1987, but it's for the 1986 season. And I took my program that I wrote for Sports Illustrated and I changed it around so that it works for Strat-O-Matic Baseball. And my other video was, how a game works, how the game works. I played one game. It showed, the screens, how the game, is progresses through the innings, what it shows you while you're playing it, how the computer manager works, what options you have in this game. So if that's out there, that's a longer video. This is going to be a shorter video. This one is just based on having the program play an entire season. And before I do that, let me show you this real quick. So this is how my game works. So you can play a single game, you know, two you can manage both teams, or you can have the computer manage one team. And then this is what we're going to do now is play a whole season. And what it does is it plays in American League 1,134 games. It uses the lineups that were used in each game and the starting pitches that you use in each game. And then the computer manager manages the decisions as each game, is played. Um, So the goal of showing everything that you see when you're playing the board game doesn't apply to this because it's playing everything in the background. It just shows you the results. And the fact that I add color to the player cards doesn't matter either because you're not going to see the player cards because the games get played in the background. I'm just going to show you how it works and what the results are and how it compares to 1986. So here's the computer manager logic. I'm not going to go through this. I went through this in more detail on the other video, so if you're interested, but you can read it. Just pause the video and read it if you want to. But the computer manager can bunt, he can steal, he has to make manager base running decisions when an extra base option is something that is available in Strat-O-Matic Baseball, which it is sometimes. He intentionally walks batters sometimes, depending on the situation. He plays the infield in sometimes. He'll use pinch hitters, but only for pitchers. So pinch hitters are not used in the American League. It just plays the whole game out with the 9 starting players, no pinch hitters. And then it uses relief pitchers when a pitcher reaches his fatigue level in Strat-O-Matic Baseball. Fatigue level is reached, the pitcher is removed. Or if a starter pitches 6 or more innings, lets 6 or more earned runs in, or if a reliever lets 3 or more and they get relieved. The reliever selected is based on how many games in relief each pitcher pitched in 1986, and also ninth inning relievers based on who the closer is and how many saves each pitcher got during 1986. So that is how the game works. Here is, I downloaded from the internet all the starting lineups for 1986. So this file that you see in front of you has 1,134 line items. Each line is a game, and they're all in order. So the first game played in 1986 was Cleveland at Baltimore. And you can see the starting pitchers were Ken Schramm against Mike Flanagan, and then there's the starting lineup. And if I scroll to the right, you'd see the rest of the starting lineup for Cleveland, and then you'd see the starting lineup for Baltimore. But I have this file. It's used by my program as it goes through each game of the season. One thing I did have to do is my program, Strat-O-Matic, has 15 position players and 10 pitchers on each team. And in 1986, teams had more than that. So there's, some players that played a few games that are not in my game. And I had to go through this whole file and find those players. I wrote a program to do it and then replace them. The players were in my game. So I would replace the players that are not in my game that but did play games in 1986 with one of the players that didn't play very many games but was in my game. So I did not put, their best pitcher in for extra games or a team's best starting players in for extra games. All those players played the same amount of games as they did in 1986. It's just the kind of the fringe players that were not everyday players. They would play a few more games to make up for the ones that are missing from my game. Okay, so I go back to my game. Here it is. Here's a picture of the box of my game that I bought that I used for this, and then here's what the cards look like. There's Clemens and Mike Schmidt. So this is really easy to do. If you hit S, you can see the standings. So no games have been played yet. If you hit A, it'll zero all the standings out and it'll play all 1,134 games. So I'll hit yes to that, and it just starts playing. It's playing all those games in a row. Managers making decisions on relief pitchers and bunting and stealing, and now it's done. So there's what happened. This is unusual because I've done this a number of times, and what I found is Boston rarely wins the East, even though they did win the East in 1986. But usually California wins in the West, but this time Texas won the West. So I'm going to do it again. So I hit A again. It's going to delete all the games, and then it's going to start playing. So it's playing, and each time you see, a flash on the screen, it's a game finishing and what the final score is where the game is. So now let's see what happens. So I hit standings. So now this is more like I see when I'm doing this over and over. I see the Red Sox did not win the East like they were supposed to. And I'm not sure why, because if you look at the Pythagorean, how many games they should have won based on their stats, it's not far off. But for some reason, they don't win enough games here, and the Yankees seem to be really good. Look at that, 107 and 55. And then the California's down there winning the West. So let me do it one more time. See if California can win the West 2 out of 3 times. What happens on the East? So there we go. All right, there's California again. Excellent. Look at that. They tied Texas, but they did win the West. And look at Cleveland won the East, and Boston again didn't win. I don't get it. So there is how the whole seasons are played. Now I can look at the stats for a team by hitting T. I can look at the batting stats for a team. So let's look at Boston. So there's the games that we just played. 162 games were played. There's how many games each player played, how many at-bats they had, how many hits, doubles, triples. That's what just happened in my program. And you can see in parentheses is the number of home runs they actually hit in 1986 and the batting average they actually had in 1986. So let's just pick one out. Let's pick out Dwight Evans because he's kind of close. So Dwight Evans played in 150 games here in my replay season. He hit 28 home runs versus the 26 he hit in real life. He batted .239 versus the .259 he batted in real life. If you look down to the bottom line here, the Red Sox in total hit 20 less home runs in this simulated season as they did in the real season. 124 for 144, and their batting average for a team was .270 in the simulated season versus .271 in the real season. So they didn't hit as many home runs, but the batting average was about what it was. But they did not win as many games as they were supposed to. Let's look at their pitching. So Roger Clemens was the Cy Young Award winner in 1986. He went 24-4. You can see in parentheses that's what he did in real life. In the game, he won 21-9, so it's not too far off. His ERA in the game was 2.42. Real life was 2.48. So he kind of performed about the same as how he did in real life. And if you look at the total, the Red Sox ERA is slightly higher in this simulated season than it was in actuality, 4.06 versus 3.94. But look at their wins. They won 95 games in the regular 1986. They only run 78 here. So that's interesting. So what if I look at the team that did win? I think it was Cleveland. Cleveland was pretty good in 1986. They had some pretty good players. Let's see. They definitely overachieved on home runs. They hit 201 instead of 157. And then the batting average was 288 versus 284. So in 1986, they hit 284 for a team. That's pretty good for a team batting average. They had Pat Tabler, who hit over 300. Tony Bernazard, who hit 300. Franco hit over 300. So they had some good players. Joe Carter, before he went to Toronto, he hit a lot of home runs. He had a good batting average. So they won the East in the simulated season. Let's look at their pitching. And there's their pitchers. Phil Niekro didn't do too good in the simulated season, but he was 9-17 in what we just played on the computer, and he had a really high ERA. But if you look at the team ERA, 4.56 versus 4.58, that's pretty close. They won 96 games versus 84 in real life. So they overachieved and Boston underachieved, basically. So you can look at all those kinds of things. And then you can also look at the league leaders. So I'll look at both batting and pitching. So American League statistics, American League batting. I'll start with batting average. I'll say I need 450 at-bats to qualify. So there we have the leaders in batting average in what I just did in my program. So this is not their actual 1986 results, but this is what they did in the program that I wrote and I just ran. And the one that's in red is the one that led in 1986. So in 1986, Wade Boggs did lead the league in batting average. I think it was 350 something. So he 372. So he led the league in here and in real life. If I look at home runs, Jesse Barfield led 1986. He's up there. RBIs, Joe Carter got the most RBIs in 1986. He's up there. Hits, Mattingly, in real life and in the game. There's doubles. There's triples. Triples is unique. The league leader in real life doesn't always produce as many triples because the odds of getting a triple are so low. All right, stolen bases. Ricky Henderson stole 60 in my game, and he led in real life also. There's runs scored, Ricky Henderson. And then we have slugging, so 450 at-bats. The slugging leader in 1986 was Mattingly, but he came in sixth here. And then the last thing I do is kind of the MVP candidates. And this is just batters hit a lot of home runs or a lot of RBIs and high batting average. So these are the top hitters in my replay. There's no one in red because Roger Clemens was the MVP and he didn't bat. But these are some of the top batters in the season that was just played on my game. So let's look at the pitchers, and this will be the last thing we do. I said this is going to be a short video. So ERA leaders. Roger Clemens led in ERA in real life, and he was second here, pretty close. Innings pitched, Bert Blyleven. Strikeouts, Langston had the most strikeouts in 1986, and he's right there here. Wins, Clemens had 24 in 1986. He got 21 here. Losses, Dotson had the most losses in the game and in 1986. Saves, Righetti from Boston had the most, or from New York had the most saves. But in the replay season, Tigers' Willie Hernandez had the most games pitched. The pitcher with the most games is again Mitch Williams, who was on Texas at this point. Somehow he didn't get enough games pitched here to make the list. And then there's the Cy Young candidates. Again, these are just the players in my game that I just ran the season of that had good ERAs or lots of wins or lots of strikeouts or lots of saves. So it picks them out, and Roger Clemens was the Cy Young Award winner, and he was also one of the best pitchers of the replay that I just did. So that is that. You can plug in, you can play one game, or you can have it play a whole season, and you can look at all the statistics. And that's what you can do. My other game, you could play a whole season of just one team. You'd manage each game of the season, for one individual team that you pick, and then all the other games and the team that you play against are managed by the computer. But I did not add that feature in this game that I just finished. So that's that. Hope there was some interest in that. I was happy that I was able to complete it, and that it works and comes out fairly close to the actual results of 1986. Not exactly, but then the game has dice. So depends on how the dice come up for each player. So if you're interested and want to see how the game actually plays when you play one game, you can go and look at my other video. I'll put a link to it in this video so you can go and find it. So with that, I will say goodbye and good night or good afternoon or good morning.